Welcome to the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. I am the host, John Khosravi, and I practice U.S. immigration law exclusively. For more information about the program, please visit www.immigrationlawyerspodcast.com. Please note that this recording is informational only and does not constitute legal advice. Please consult an immigration attorney for specific information related to your case. Also, this recording is copyrighted, and written permission is required for rebroadcasting. For more information about me, please visit jqqlaw.com. Hi everyone, this episode of the Immigration Lawyers Podcast is going to be a recap of a lot of the major events that happened in 2016 with reference to immigration law. Note that my firm focuses less on crimmigration and removal defense and usually handles naturalization, family-based, and employment-based immigration. So the news and events I'll talk about will reflect that. So 2016 was a very interesting year. We had a lot of events and changes and a lot of new information that we learned about U.S. immigration and the nature of immigration in the United States. And obviously it was a presidential year where immigration was probably the number one topic in the race and on the minds of the people voting. But let's first start with the government and what kind of activities they've been doing in 2016. You know, these raids only increased in 2016. The administration, the Obama administration, was considered pro-immigration. However, in the area of removal and raids into local businesses, it didn't seem such. On the other end, articles came out showing that people who overstay their visas hardly ever get caught. And the people who do get caught in these raids and in other ways are facing an insanely backed up immigration court processing. The number of judges are low and the demand for these courts are high. So people are seeing years and years of wait time in removal proceedings, as many practitioners know personally. Interestingly, the immigration issues aren't just focused on people who are foreign aliens, but also U.S. citizens and Americans. The IRS got the power to revoke passports if an American owed more than $50,000 in tax debt. Also, the CBP is permitted now and regularly does read social media and phones of people entering the U.S. This can be a big problem for arriving aliens, and especially in the area of immigrant intent, and can create a lot of problems for expedited removal or other issues. We have also seen changes in the process for USCIS. There was a general fee increase in December, as well as a almost complete overhaul and update of all the immigration forms without much notice. Luckily, the Immigration Department decided to give more time for people to update the forms before submitting, or else a lot of the forms submitted in December would have been void. In the middle of the month, there was also a lawsuit that failed for foreign nationals affected by the new visa bulletin chart that was added and who were hurt by the changes that occurred on there. Unfortunately, they were unsuccessful, especially EB2 Indian categories. But on the happier end, the Department of State announced that it would no longer require original or wet ink signatures for affidavit of support submitted to the National Visa Center. Instead, photocopies or scans are now permitted, but the names can't be typed and you can't use electronic signatures. However, I'm not sure how the embassies are going to handle this because recently the embassies have been requesting original I-864 separate than that which was sent to the National Visa Center during the interview. This was a new process I didn't have to deal with in the past, and I'm not sure if the embassies themselves will also accept photocopies or if this only applies to the National Visa Center. Another very annoying problem that's been happening for a long time is having green cards sent to the wrong address or simply not sent or with errors to beneficiaries and applicants. USCIS admitted this was a wide-scale problem affecting tens and maybe hundreds of thousands or more people, and it was their fault. But these kind of errors are all over the place. Citizenship was granted erroneously to many people this year, even those in the midst of removal proceedings. I read an article from the Washington Times that said because of the amount of errors, which in particular was for the ELA system applications not doing FBI background checks, many citizenship or naturalization applications were approved and citizenship was issued that didn't undergo the required background checks. Now, this Washington Times article says that the process for granting citizenships and hearings was frozen on November 29th. However, I've had ELIS cases that have been approved and done, so I'm not positive and I haven't been able to verify why this WashingtonTimes.com article says that the process of naturalization has paused. but I don't want practitioners to know about it in case they have cases that are pending. Moving on, we saw a lot of bad immigration lawyering happen in 2016. The EB5 category was fraught with fraud, unfortunately. There was a Newport lawyer that stole $8 million, a Los Angeles group that raised $27 million from Chinese investors that was stolen, another California immigration attorney that stole $72 million, and instead of running away, went to buy a yacht with it. There was an attorney in Chicago who pled guilty to defrauding a group of Chinese investors out of nearly $160 million. There was an Oakland regional center that crumbled and wasn't able to further its pursuits. And in general, there was a crackdown on finder's fees and referral fees given to immigration attorneys and non-registered financial service providers. On one end, it's really bad to have this kind of news out there for the EB5 program, but on the other, if they crack down and clean up this program, it's going to help the investment program in general to create more confidence in it. Unfortunately, Congress keeps pushing back the new EB5 law, and it's not clear what's going to be in it. Some of the proposals have just been ridiculous, such as the backdating of the law, forcing some to potentially invest more funds or do additional source of funds going back a year or two after the passing of the rule, which is an unnecessary and high burden for people who've already applied to have to submit to. But EB5 wasn't the only category that had problems. There was a New York attorney who ran a wide-scale H-1B visa fraud scheme, as well as the random immigration fraud attorneys and immigration representatives that are always occurring. Interestingly, there's also a fake visa school that was issuing F1 visas for foreigners, making a lot of money at it, but not actually being a school. And also, speaking of fake groups, there was a U.S. embassy shut down in Africa. Well, not a real U.S. embassy. It was a fake organization associated with several mafia groups that was actually issuing visas for decades that were usable and passed. Obviously, there must have been some coordination with a rogue group in the State Department to be able to create valid visas. But the fact that it shut down after 10 years of operating and functioning fully and issuing visas is incredible and really calls the whole system into question. With regards to the changes in law, there was an L1 adopted decision that allowed functional managers using low number of employees in the U.S. in the L1A category to be able to obtain the status, in particular if they had a lot of employees overseas and could include the operations of foreign employees to show that they were not handling administrative duties and were focused on their managerial or executive or functional manager positions. There was the Christmas gift from USCIS recently given about the new National Interest Waiver Standard, the Dahanasar framework, which lowered the barriers to obtaining the National Interest Waiver. And I'm very excited about that one. However, as you all well know, DAPA, Deferred Actions for Parents of Child Arrivals, was not successful in court, and the arguments would not be renewed because of the end of the current administration. And with the new administration coming in, deferred action, or DACA, is still up in the air whether it's going to be renewed or approved. However, on the bright side for people who enter the U.S. unlawfully, one statistic I found said immigration judges have decided that 57% of people in their course are entitled to remain in the United States. So there's a more than half percentage that are successful in one way or another in staying, I'm guessing getting deferred action or prosecutorial discretion. USCIS also introduced a very good program for retention of EB1, EB2, and EB3 workers and improvements in the high-skilled non-immigrant workers, clarifying a lot of the issues that previously existed, such as H-1B transfers, and including that in other categories as well. It's a long read, but if you're an employment-based practitioner, you should read the 95-page assessment and updated regulation. On the devious side, one ex-ICE attorney was sentenced to prison for falsifying documents in an immigration case. It's definitely an interesting one worth reading. It's very sad that the government attorney would go out of their way to falsify documents to keep a gentleman here who didn't seem to have that bad a case or position or background to need an ICE officer to go out of their way. Well, it's never right to do that, but if this guy had no criminal history or some devious stuff in his past, the fact that ICE attorney would go that far and to falsify evidence to kick him out was extraordinary, and I'm glad he was caught and removed from the practice. Also, a CBP officer was charged with bribery, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice as part of an alleged pay-to-stay immigration scheme. And finally, looking at the people affected, by the immigration process. An interesting article said that California saw a surge in Chinese immigrants, and in general, Chinese immigrants are pushing past Mexico as the #1 group of people immigrating and unlawfully immigrating. With colleges seeing less U.S. citizens and persons being able to afford schooling and lower numbers, there's been a surge in colleges advertising and marketing abroad for visas, F1 student visas. This is a problem for some countries which are still having difficulties getting approved for the F1 visa, but there's a surge of foreign students coming to the U.S. In which will eventually want to stay here. So it's going to affect the practice of immigration in the medium term. You know, if they're coming here for college for 4 years, at the 5th year or 3rd to 5th years, they're going to start thinking about OPT and potentially getting employment in the U.S. So that they're great candidates for future clients. Happily, the Obama administration ended the program once used to track mostly Arab and Muslim Middle Eastern men called the NSERS program, which forced them to register in the United States. And finally, on a practitioner's note, the world's first robot lawyer overturned 160,000 parking tickets in London and New York. It's a new electronic system that reviews cases and tries to fix them. Probably parking tickets are much easier to deal with legally than as opposed to more complex immigration issues. But it is something to watch out for in the practice that you have to analyze what it is that you can do that eventually could be replaced with a computer either 1, 3, 5, 10 years in the future, and adjust now so you're not caught blindsided. Some categories are complicated enough, some immigration categories are complicated enough where a human's presence is definitely required. I can see that for removal and complex immigration issues and complex immigration employment-based issues. However, as much as I enjoy doing family cases and naturalization cases, for a lot of these, as they're intended for the beneficiary, the applicants and petitioners do on their own, and not necessarily need the use of an attorney, I can see software that guides people through the process of filling the I-130, G28s, G325As, and these documents. So that's one thing to think about and adjust for in the future if you're a practitioner of family-based immigration. I hope you all have a great 2017. It looks to be a very interesting year, and I hope to be with you through it and learn more about the practice and to meet all of you. Have a great one.